If we want to take this analysis one step further, we actually have to look at the work of Jean Baudrillard. And Jean Baudrillard does something slightly different than Foucault in trying to understand how system works. For Jean Baudrillard, we end up being beyond these binaries, these Hegelian binaries. Hegelian binaries are thesis, antithesis, thesis, antithesis. And those are sort of real clashing things. For Baudrillard, we're beyond. We're beyond any real conflict. The end of history is here. The real is never reproduced. Rather, it's just an endless simulation. We are beyond the right reproduction of reality. It's just what he calls the hyper-real. The real versus illusion binary, or real and reproduction, doesn't make sense anymore. Since Andy Warhol, everything is just production of production. And there's no real reference to anything anymore. Everything is just a simulation of a simulation, right? When you think about it, no name brand items at the supermarket are often just made in the same warehouse, the same factory as the name brand stuff. They just slap different labels on them and they give them different prices. So there's no actual real value there beyond the semiological value, beyond what we're willing to pay for the brand. That's it. And so in that way, right, there is no real good soup or bad soup. There is no real bargain devalued soup or better quality good soup. No, it's just brands endlessly referencing each other with no real referent. There's no actual good soup. And even the claim to authenticity is just another form of responding to people wanting authenticity. So Baudrillard talks about in his book Simulations, which is a smaller book than Simulation and Simulacra, published by Semiotext, he makes the example that Disneyland is sort of the best example of simulation. Disneyland exists to make America seem real. But in fact, America itself is just a Disneyland version of what a country should be. What is the real America? There is no real America. All America is the endless reproduction of culture. It's culture reduplicating with no end. So, for example, if we just look at American political discourse, real America is middle America. No, real America is America of immigrants. No, real America is, white. No, real America is in the city, diversity. No, real America is apple pie. No, real America is pizza, and so on. What is real America? There is no real America. America is just a continual simulation of itself, just reproducing and responding to all of these other simulacra. Take a look at the biggest sort of thing these days about what America is. America is freedom. Freedom is a meaningless term, unless it has a preposition. Freedom to do what? Freedom from what? And this is where we literally see that everything is a simulation. The basis of America, that America is freedom, is an empty referent. And this is what Baudrillard talks about in his book, Simulation and Simulacra, that the Matrix, right in one of the opening scenes, references. And this is what the Wachowskis are referencing throughout the whole Matrix, throughout the whole trilogy. They're referencing this notion of simulation, of endless simulacra proliferating in reference to each other. America is an endless set of cultural references with no real to refer to. It's just endless simulation proliferating. This is the work of Baudrillard. This is Baudrillard's point about contemporary late capitalist culture. Let's look a little bit closer, because the chapter that the Wachowskis are referencing at that opening scene is a chapter called On Nihilism within the book Simulation and Simulacra. And so if we read that chapter, right, and we know they're absolutely referencing this chapter on purpose, because the first page of that chapter is on the opposite side of the book. So they're explicitly moving where that header is to a page so we can see it. So we know they're specifically trying to reference that chapter. And in that chapter, what Baudrillard is saying is that because all resistance is now just a simulation of resistance, nihilism has no meaning anymore. He says, nihilism used to signify destruction. Back in the old days, when we used the term nihilism, we used to mean people like Nietzsche, who said that the death of God meant the destruction of meaning. And, oh no, that's scary. You're going to destroy all real meaning. And so nihilism was sort of the fight against realness. Nihilism is like, oh, we don't believe in anything anymore. Let's destroy it. But now this nihilism has been integrated into the system. So rather the system is endlessly repeating, including repeating nihilism, to no end or purpose. There's no challenge. Nihilism used to challenge. Nihilism doesn't challenge anymore. Nihilism is just part of the system. And so, quoting Baudrillard, he says, the apocalypse is finished. Today it is a procession of the neutral, of forms of the neutral, and of indifference. That's what nihilism is today. Nihilism is no longer, fuck your God. Nihilism is now, meh. That's what nihilism is. And so this is really interesting. And here, this is where, in this chapter, Baudrillard responds to Hegel. So we've seen Hegel throughout the Matrix series. Baudrillard responds to it. He says, in response to Hegel, quote, the dialectical stage, the critical stage, is empty. There is no more stage. End quote. So here's Baudrillard's response to Hegel. The thesis, antithesis, creating a synthesis, creating an antithesis, synthesis movement throughout history, that dialectical movement of opposites. Baudrillard says, no, it doesn't exist anymore. It's empty. It's just simulation. And so there is no apocalypse anymore. We don't destroy anything anymore. Rather, we implode all meaning in endless simulation and hyperreality. So, quote, the masses themselves are caught up in a gigantic process of inertia through acceleration. The destruction of humanity in the Matrix was nihilism. When the machines destroyed humans, that was nihilism. But the endless repetition of the Matrix is beyond nihilism. Humans aren't destroyed anymore, right? They're just endless repetition. It's beyond meaning, beyond history. Why does the Matrix exist? We don't know. Why? As batteries? Who cares? We don't even know how long the system is going on. So, from this reading that the Wachowskis want to give us, then, in fact, Agent Smith is nihilism come back. Agent Smith is actually the threat of the destruction of the procession of simulacra that is the Matrix. Agent Smith can drag us back to meaning by destroying endless simulation and hyperreality. So, if we come back, we see that Zion are those who are not part of the global capitalist regime. They're off the grid. They're denying themselves from it. And yet Zion is always repopulated by the machines. The architect says it. We've done it 6 times so far.
This is the 6th version.
So the Matrix machines as a dyad is the Matrix, and the machines stand in for the media, political, social order of late capitalism. The order of the day is complete and endless repetition of simulation. It's producing us, humans, as batteries, as subjects. Meaning has long been fractalized into the absurd. We are just endless humans within the system. Once we had good and evil, we had confrontation, we had a hope of relationality or stakes. Now the system is too hegemonic. It's just structure. The system doesn't even know why it runs anymore. Like capitalism has no idea. It's just a system off the rails, just endlessly reproducing itself. The system is Trump. It's endless lying. It is the right. It is the alt-right. It's endless frothing at new social forums, even as they find new ways to froth. The system is the left, who is endlessly outraged. It's all just reproducing each other, who rail against capitalism. But they don't produce, they don't have an end or an alternative to capitalism within this. A black president, we thought, could ground us in the real and lead us out of what Baudrillard calls the desert of the real. It could lead us out of reality. But we very soon realized under Obama that we were still just as thirsty as we always were. There's still no meaning. There's still empty simulacra. The system integrates everything into itself endlessly. Terrorism is counter-terrorized, and all of it is annihilated on the television screen. This is a Baudrillard quote. Annihilated on the television screen. This is what it means to be in the Matrix. So to quote Baudrillard in this chapter about the Matrix, The matrix remains a binary. The matrix does not change. It is always the 0-1. The metastable or homeostatic form of the current system. That's what the matrix is. And that's what the Wachowskis are wanting us to see in their movie. They want us to see that that's what the matrix is. The matrix in this chapter is described as endlessly repeating. Right? And this is the Hegelian binary between machine and human in the movie, each necessary for each other, each endlessly reduplicating the other. Not real humans nor real machines, but a play of simulacra where whole crops of humans were lost to get neos who continually reassert humans back into Zion. No real, no fake, no illusion, even the Oracle. She's better than some humans. There's no real, there's no fake, there's no illusion, there's no counterfeit, just endless repetition of signs. Thus, some machines are as human and some humans are as machine as the system keeps us. This is the end goal here. In the chapter on nihilism, we see Baudrillard championing nihilism as the way to break through repetition. Thus, Baudrillard in this book, this is the last chapter of Simulation and Simulacra, and in it Baudrillard says that he himself is a nihilist. He's championing nihilism. And so Baudrillard in the Matrix movies is Agent Smith. Nihilism is the only way to break through this endless repetition, because if a nihilism says, fuck it, let's destroy the system, then this endless repetition actually has to confront a real potential destruction. And meaning comes back in, where we can say, oh no, we don't want it to be destroyed. What do we choose to keep and what do we choose not to keep? The threat of real annihilation brings meaning back in. Otherwise, it's just endless repetition. And so thus in the movie, the nihilist that Baudrillard champions is Agent Smith. Agent Smith threatens the destruction of the whole system. And the rainbow at the end of the Matrix Revolutions is the appearance of hope, meaning and belief. And it can seduce us out of the annihilation of the hyperreal. The hyperreal is endless simulation. There's simulated hope. Obama was hope. What did we get after hope? Trump, right? It's just endless repetition. Annihilation is the real hope. When we annihilate the hyperreal and come back down to reality, we can get real hope. And that's what the rainbow means at the end. The threat of the destruction of the order actually allows us to wake back up and say, wait, maybe there's something real we can strive for, and end beyond this repetition of the same. That's the Matrix read through Baudrillard. But in fact, I still don't think that's where the Wachowskis are ending. Because they don't end with the destruction of the system. They end up with the system back in place. We're not thrust back into the dystopic future. No, we're back at the Matrix. That's where we're back. The Matrix is reset. So I actually think that the Wachowskis are more Foucauldian and Sartrean in their answer. And the biggest reason I think this is actually that rainbow at the end. That rainbow isn't a real rainbow. That rainbow is a simulation of a rainbow. But it's a simulation of a rainbow that says, really explicitly, let's let queer people live. That's what that says. Because that's what Foucault is saying. If we look at the work of David Halperin, we see his book, Saint Foucault. Foucault is the main philosopher of queer theory, of LGBT people. He's the biggest philosopher that they use to champion their place in society. And this is this Sartrean, we as queer people are going to live. And the reason we know this is both just philosophically from everything I've argued here, but also because we know that the Wachowskis came out as trans. So this is part of their early life saying, look, let us live. Let us be part of the system. So this is the meaning of the Matrix. The Matrix is an endless procession of simulation. It is the structures that construct who we are as agents. But a Foucauldian reading says, look, it's when we understand these structures, it's when we realize that we are created by the system, that we can actually choose to have agency in terms of what we choose in the system to take up. And it's through that we can become Neos within the matrix. And when we change the matrix by creating new subjectivities, then the matrix can allow for more ethical ways of being. It allows for the system and people's individuality to be in balance. We need to allow room for people to take the red pill, and the red pill is new subjectivities. Thank you. I know this is a really long video, but there's a lot to talk about, and I really appreciate it if you stayed this long to get to the end of my analysis. Please like, subscribe, do all of that fun stuff, promote me on Patreon. Whatever you want to support, or just just reply in the comments and say what you thought. So thank you again for watching the video, and I hope you enjoyed.